Um,
That new thing is so creepy.
I know. I almost always
Tense.
accidentally hit leave meeting. I don't know why my intuition is like,
Oh, right. Because it asks you
Yeah.
like,
yes.
you're okay.
It's like,
Like privacy rights. You're like, okay. All right.
oh.
All right. Welcome, Molly, to the Biohacker Babes podcast. We're thrilled to have you today.
Yes, I'm excited to be here. Oh my goodness. I feel like I could talk to you two all day long. So this is going to be a lot of fun.
Yes. I know. I think we're gonna have to find a way to end it before we hit the 3-hour mark today. And I have to say, so funny story how Molly and I met. We were attending the Bulletproof virtual conference. Gosh, what was that? Like last October, September.
Yes.
And they had this like awesome chat room and everyone was chiming in. Oh, where are you from? Where are you from? And I'm like screaming Vegas. Like, is anyone else from Vegas? And finally this girl, Molly, chimes in. And
amazing.
I feel like we've been like BFF since. Like we just like started doing audio messages and talking every day and finally met. And you're just such an amazing person. You're such a great friend. You're so knowledgeable in this field of sleep. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today. But just, we've been looking forward to this for so long and so happy to have you.
Oh, well, thank you so much for saying that. And I was actually going to mimic the exact same thing. It was like one of the coolest things to come out of that. It's a virtual conference. It was navigating during the pandemic. How do these things work? What can you get? What can come out of something like that? And it was incredible. I mean, just now to have you in my life, I'm so inspired by all the work that you're doing. And now to be connected with Lauren too, as well. Just like the difference that you guys are making in the world is huge. So really, really grateful. And yes, definitely excited for our conversation today and more to come.
Thank you.
And I'm so glad to finally meet you because we haven't actually met, but next week we will in person.
Yes, I know.
It's so funny, like growing up, because I'm older than Renee, I felt like I was always introducing her to my friends. And now recently I'm like, can I be friends with your friends, Renee?
Yes.
I do have very cool friends.
It's very true. Yes. Oh my goodness. Well, that is so cool. Yeah. I'm very excited for our in real life meetup. And yeah, I think the pandemic brought interesting ways of experiencing friendships more virtually. And absolutely, Renee, we've sent a number of voice notes back and forth and, so we got to experience, and Voxer, what that can all look like. Yes. Yes.
Thank you, tech.
Yes, exactly.
Well, and also with the pandemic came a lot of sleep issues, right?
Yes.
I know we've all seen that. I have to say I'm fortunate. I haven't experienced that, but I know, Molly, a lot of your clients have been coming to you and you're like, oh my God, since the pandemic, I can't sleep. But before we even go down that rabbit hole, sleep is a skill. First of all, such a cool name and subject because sleep really is a skill. But what got you interested in sleep? Like, why are you so passionate about the topic?
Yeah, the why is very, I think, pertinent to this conversation because the creation of sleep as a skill really came from the aim to solve my own problem with my sleep. So what it had looked like was I was a serial entrepreneur living in Manhattan, burning the candle at both ends. And over the years, had a number of labels around my sleep as it related to my sleep. And it would look like some version of I'm a night owl, I'm a short sleeper, I'm a bad sleeper, it's in my genes, it's this, that, and the other, and a fixed sort of look at that and a really almost like a resignation or no need to reevaluate that area because that's how it is. And so coming from that perspective, that brought me a particular set of results. And I didn't correlate as I was starting to get more and more sick more often, more anxious, more stressed, more intense symptoms from my period, a number of things that just were not working clearly. And it wasn't until I went through my own period of insomnia while traveling internationally. So my fiance and I, we had literally bought a one-way ticket and it was going to be the beginning of traveling the world. And it was supposed to be this thing. And yet the amount of stress that we were under with our businesses showed that we weren't there's still so many stressors to bring on the road. And the symptomology of that for me was I couldn't sleep. It was so, I can say now like, oh, it's frustrating. It was upset. It was so I don't even have words. Like it was just, and it was mystifying. Yeah, exactly. And it was also just felt like a major failure and like this rock bottom moment in my life, of just, okay, now I can't even do the most basic thing that should quote unquote be, given to all of us as a general basic skill. Right. And yet, at the same time, that rock bottom moment ended up being, in retrospect, one of the best things that ever happened to me, because hitting that, actually, the cost now outweighed any sort of reasons to keep this sort of way of being around that I had for a number of, for most of my adult life. So with that, then ensued, really this quest to shift this area, because at its lowest, what it looked like was going to the doctors in Croatia with Google Translate and being like, help, like I can't sleep, leaving with sleeping pills. Like, and this ensued as we're hopping from different places. So Croatia, Budapest, and Italy, and all three of those places, a series of Xanax, Valium, and Ambien, and all of those things, and just so conflicted, because knowing that I can't be taking, I'm supposed to be a healthy person, and yet I'm taking these things, and yet, but it's so desperate that then still wanting to sleep. So it was a real kind of inner battle. But it then did create the absolute sense of urgency to shift this area. So lots of things that I went down the rabbit hole on. Then once restoring level of homeostasis to my sleep, because we actually flew back from travels, we went back to New York to really handle my sleep. It was that much of an area. And so once restoring that, then embarking on optimizing. So, because as I shared, it wasn't that great before. And so it's not even like, oh, okay, well now I'm here and now it's good. It wasn't even working. It was broken before. So then this conversation of now optimizing became fascinated with this world of chronobiology, circadian rhythm optimization. And it really changed my life. So I couldn't stop talking about it, started naturally working with, other people just that were struggling, because I was so empathetic because I had been through so much there. And then it built into, now we have one-on-one courses, we have cohorts, we have weekly newsletters, podcasts, just, this whole world's got created out of really some inner struggles with my own sleep. So I'm really excited to speak more about what that looks like and what can be possible when diving into this from this context of it being a skill set.
That's incredible. It's so awesome what you can learn just by being challenged with something yourself. And I can't wrap my mind around this idea that sleep is a skill when it's so necessary. It should just be easy. It's like breathing should be easy, but that also is a skill that we've somehow turned upside down, and it's so difficult. I mean, so many people are so tired throughout the entire day, and then they go to lay down at bed and they're not tired. What do you think is the biggest driver of this sleep deprivation epidemic?
Yeah. And such a great point too, because this concept, I think it can be really empowering first to start in this context that there's an opportunity, if something's not working, to pull in this conversation of skill set. So breath work, great example as well, but certainly sleep. And I do get the irony. So some people might be hearing this and they might not be sold on this conversation of it being a skill set. And they might say, well, come on, like you're gonna sleep eventually, whatever. And I think the reason that it's important to take a look at this is one, in the 21st century, this conversation that it's become a skill set. Now, if we were to go back ancestral days and kind of make this argument, it might have been a little bit of a harder stance to have, because there was such living in tandem with the rhythms of nature. We're living outdoors much more at higher numbers. Since 2016, the World Health Organization has given numbers around the average person spending around 90% of their days inside. And this was before a pandemic, before we're navigating these times when things are so inside living. And so why does that matter for sleep? Very important for sleep, because these rhythms are so greatly affected by these triggers externally. So in circadian rhythm entrainment, it's this conversation of zeitgebers or time givers. So these time givers are things that happen externally in our environment or behaviors that then can tell the body what time it is and what to be doing when. So if we are devoid of that access to those natural cycles that just kind of took care of a lot of this for us, now we're getting mixed messages where we have the opportunity to really live 24-hour lifestyles. Renee and I are right now in Vegas, and I had been, where Lauren is for many years in New York, and both have the opportunity to have, all day, every day. You
All
could be up,
night.
all night, the
You
whole
want a
day.
coffee at 4 a.m., you can find it.
Yes, exactly. With lots of light, maybe not natural light, but lots of light available. So it can be very, very confusing. I work with a lot of poker players on their sleep. And certainly, as we know, in casinos, they're often designed in a method or a manner to ensure that we are confused on the time and what kind of is going on externally, so that we kind of lose that space and time paradigm. And that is very, very important for the automaticity of our sleep. And so we also found that when people during the pandemic were now living even more indoor living, fear, there's some elements of fear of going outside and concerns there. And so with that, we see kind of a cascading amount of difficulty with sleep. And that's not the only reason. Then, of course, there's stressors, management of a number of things. When you don't have some of those original cues, even things like, certain routines that you were acting on entrain the body. That might be just, when you see your coworkers, when you eat at certain times, the lighting, you get all these act as really account-ownable triggers and tell the body what to be doing when, and the body loves consistency, for greater or lesser element. And there's kind of an averaging out system that happens. So with the restriction of that, then we saw some problems for sleep.
Yeah. I mean, circadian rhythm, like we talk about that a lot on the show. I think it's so important. But so I'm curious, you said you work with a lot of poker players.
Yes.
Are your fiance, my husband as well. But their lifestyle is just so crazy. And I actually think it's somewhat similar to Broadway performers like Lauren.
Yeah.
Like you're inside a space where you don't know what time of day it is. It tends to be light, really light, bright lights at night.
Yeah.
And like Ryan, the other night, he's playing poker till 4 a.m. and then his HRV just sucks for 3 days. So what are some biohacks that people can do that are in one of these crazy worlds?
Yes. Yeah. Great question. And one, because it can be really a stance that some people take. Oh, okay, well, you got to know that this is going to impact your health and this and the other. And it's very real. There are concerns about, World Health Organization listing shift working as a possible carcinogenic. Some very real, things that can come about from that. Some concerns around studies that point to upticks in all-cause mortality for being outside of that kind of natural rhythm routinely. So there is that. And at the same time, shift workers are incredibly important to the fabric of our society. There's a lot of, gratitude for the fact that these people are, really making a difference in different capacities. So then how do we work within that paradigm?
Right.
Couple things then. So one, what we're trying to do is, so one of the things we do at Sleep is a Skill is we create what we call your circadian crafted day. So your circadian crafted day is really through the lens of this conversation of entraining your circadian rhythm. Because I think one thing that's interesting that, I certainly didn't know this when I was dealing with my sleep element of things was that our circadian rhythm exists on a spectrum. And so you can either be sort of on a weak side of that spectrum or a strong side of the spectrum, but there's lots of maneuverability within that spectrum. So what we're aiming to do, because many of us are just by nature of the current modern day lifestyle, going to be hanging out more on that weaker side. So kind of moving things over to that stronger side comes through having this lens of what are some of the things that we can do to strengthen this cue and trigger system. So this is for anyone, but certainly you're jumping right to the very important conversation that especially for shift workers or people that are outside of those rhythms, it becomes even more imperative of getting connected to this. So one of the big conversations is really, as much as we can, creating a lifestyle around this, kind of schedule that you have. One of the most challenging that I've found are the variable shift workers. So ones that one week it's on, next week it's off, the next week it's something else. A lot of that can really.
You're better off just like always being a night shift worker
every day.
Yes.
Yeah. That's got to be so rough.
And then, always being a night shift worker and then also having that kind of always mentality applying itself for even your off days, because then often we'll see people, even if they have that consistent schedule, okay, well, then on the weekends, they try to align with what their friends are doing or, people that are important to them, their kids or whatever. And then that's where often things can go awry. So instead, making this commitment that, because this is what we're aiming to do for anyone that's looking to improve their sleep, is to create a consistent sort of schedule that really happens largely 7 days a week. And so that it doesn't fall victim to term, social jet lag, which I'm sure you guys have probably spoken about. I actually think it could use a new name, because at this point I often, right? Because, and it kind of, right?
Yeah. So if funny thing is we actually... Yeah, we wrote an ebook about social jet lag, and our marketing people were like, well,
no one's traveling.
No one's traveling.
Yeah, no one's being social. No one's traveling.
Okay. So first
we need a new term.
This is another reason why I just love you guys. So, marketing heads all together, we can come up with a new name because, we would see this, it used to kind of fit in a particular paradigm because, largely I go to bed around the same time, Monday through Thursday or Friday, and then the weekend comes and then I start deviating, and then it's just an easy bucket. Okay, well, social jet lag, probably doing socially things. And yet now, one of the things that I'll see with clients is often they might not be having much of a social life at all, or the pandemic is happening. And yet there's this pull, you might have seen some of the things popping around in social media, what have you, this like kind of revenge procrastination of bedtime, kind of that self, inflicting on ourselves to shift our bedtime. And, we'll see so many people do that just by themselves, watching Netflix, being on the phone, reading, whatever they might be doing. And then there's no one really involved, but they're shifting out their bedtime, wake time. And this is a really important one just for all of us, but also for those shift workers, of how we can create just that consistency so that the body can count on the time that it's going to get tired, the time that it's going to, be alert, and then, can properly produce hormones in alignment with that at the timing of that. And I think many of us, again, to use myself as the example of what not to do for so many years, it was that there wasn't that level of reverence for my body and kind of helping to guide it. I was in this conversation of, it's mind over matter, obviously if your mental game is strong, then you can pull through this, you got a certain amount of sleep. That's fine. That's sufficient, without being connected to the levels of impact that even just a lack of regularity for our sleep can bring. And I think that can be a really empowering one for those of us that might have some other concerns around our sleep. If we can even lean into this conversation of regularity, where you're largely getting your kind of dosing of sleep at around the same bedtime, around the same wake time, even if that has you have a bit of a lower amount of total sleep. And we're not putting the cap on what's possible, but we're saying if you were to lean into that and having consistency, many studies point to that is preferable to 9 hours one night, 7 hours the next night, 4 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours, all over the place, because then our sleep architecture changes in alignment with that. So even if you just stand in that one stance from the get-go, that can really be an empowering place, because many of us can control at least that time we go to bed and the time we wake up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have something, Renee?
I was just gonna say real quick, that's one thing I love about the BioStrap is how it's looking at your sleep architecture and then saying, okay, the ideal bedtime is this, ideal wake time is this. And it's been fun trying to really like follow that each
Absolutely.
night.
Oh my
Sorry,
goodness.
Lauren, I
Yeah.
just wanted to throw that in there.
No, I mean, because so one of the things that we're really our commitment with sleep as a skill is standing in this intersection between technology, accountability, and behavioral change. And that technology side of it is often one of the first places that I have certainly people begin. And I think you guys are right in alignment with that as well, because one, that can give us such levels of awareness of where things have been, where we are now, and then also a game plan for where we're going, versus just having that fogginess or gray area of, well, I think my sleep's okay. And I also think this has opened up the doors for so many other people that previously had said, oh, my sleep's fine. That's not even an area. I don't even need to talk about that. And then they get a tracker and then it's like, oh, wait a minute. And I get a number. I actually get a lot of men, interestingly enough, not to have it a gender conversation, but a number of the people that are coming my way are really intrigued with this data component of things. And I love what you've created with Biohacker Babes and making a stance in the possibility for more and more women to be getting in on this conversation. Because I also find when women are in this conversation, they're just as passionate about this. And yet I do still find a prevalence of men coming who've been tracking. Now they've got sometimes 5 different trackers going at once. And now they want, how do I, improve this area? So it's a really exciting time, I think, in the world of sleep optimization.
Totally. I had that experience with my boyfriend because we've had Oura rings in our family for years now.
Yes.
And my boyfriend, Jeremy, was never really interested because he's always been a great sleeper. This is what he's got him an Oura ring. It's like, oh, okay. We see some gaps. We see like if you have a drink, it's going to affect it. If you were watching TV too, like he's starting to put those pieces together, but he just had this narrative. It was like, I sleep really well. Like I fall asleep. I don't know any different because I've never teased out the metrics or really paid attention. I think the data makes you pay attention.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Makes you pay attention. It gives you reverence newly for things that we might not have. And we might have had this like kind of, oh, well, common sense. Yeah, obviously we're not going to feel as great if we eat a lot, drink a lot, whatever. But then when you really see the numbers, it's such a different conversation, right? It's just really
laughing at the common sense piece, but yeah.
Yeah. And then, right. But it is, and then it's so, people say that, and myself included, because I so rarely drink now at this point, I'm always trying to find ways to still make it work. I know Renee and I, we've been, we test out all kinds of different, maybe this one will.
Psychedelic water, hop water, give me all the.
Exactly. We're testing out all these things. And yet, I was born on St. Patrick's Day, green beer flowing on my birthday every year. And yet what's happened for me is, just more and more of that clarity, and things shift as you age and a number of things going on here. But it does bring you a level of awareness and a real kind of cause and effect. And I think it can make us informed choosers in our life of, are we going to engage in this thing that is likely to bring about a particular result? And sometimes we do. That is worth it to me. I had a anthropologist on the podcast who I loved, who spoke to sleep in this terms of, sometimes you're going to choose investing in your social capital. So investing in, the people that are important to you and really connecting. And sometimes that's going to be what you choose. And then other times you're going to invest in your sleep capital.
I love that.
Right. Yeah. And I thought that was a really cool, because, speaking to the massive importance from an anthropological perspective of our tribe and our connection and our community, and, how so important. And it shows up in our sleep results. Like if you're ostracized from the tribe or whatever, you're going to likely have that show up in your numbers and overall sense of well-being, which is such a esoteric yet interesting area to try to bring quantified conversation to. But, so having said that, absolutely. Once, like it sounds like with Jeremy, then suddenly, oh my goodness. Okay. So now I'm starting to have these data points that I didn't necessarily have black and white numbers to before.
Yeah. There's something to play with.
Yes.
It can be fun and stressful and fun.
Exactly.
You gotta find the right balance.
So I wanted to go back just a step. So we put consistency as like a number one priority. And I think there's probably some subcategories. Like we know light is really important with optimizing circadian rhythm. And I'm thinking about what Renee said about poker players and me working in theater. Sometimes we're indoors and it's dark. There's been so many days when I've been at a daytime rehearsal. I'm like, I have no idea what time it is. I walk outside. I think it's 10 p.m. I'm like, oh, the sun is still up.
Yes.
Would you say that there is an optimal amount of light to dark that we should be receiving? And if I'm receiving a lot of dark signals during my day, how much would I'm just going to insert the word biohack in there. Like how much would I need to sort of neutralize that or balance out that equation? Is there an optimal percentage or number?
Yes, really good question. Well, even so, pulling it back, yes, consistency is super important. So consistency is sort of like our umbrella for everything we're doing. And one of the main frameworks that we operate within is circadian rhythm entrainment. So in training our circadian rhythm for that strengthening goal that we were speaking to, and you hit the nail on the head that light is the most important. And of course, light is not, you can't talk about light. Yeah, exactly. And, you can't talk about light without talking about darkness and talking about all, like you said, all the spectrums of light. So really becoming a connoisseur of light and the timing of that and how that plays a role in this kind of, even the shift working biohacks that Renee was speaking to, and then for all of us. So what does this look like? So essentially what we're looking to do is to create a high enough ratio. Now there isn't a specific number. It's just a kind of an amplitude. So it's like a large enough amount of light to offset then a drop in light into the evening. So really looking to have dim to darkness. So right now, actually, or starting tomorrow is the Sleep 2021 online virtual conference. I think your dad might be joining in on that one, is what I heard word of. Mm-hmm. And so last year, one of their takeaways was bright days, dim nights. So it was just like, that was the big kind of takeaway of one of the large takeaways of the conference. And so this bright days, dim nights. So what we're trying to have is this clear ratio. Now it's going to be different. So I don't want people to feel like left out of the conversation if they're saying, oh, I'm in a northern, hemisphere location and I'm not going to get as much light. It's like, oh, well, why bother? Because we'll hear a lot of people. I work with people in whatever, Alaska, Sweden, different parts where they've just got lots of different things going on with the rhythms of light that they're exposed to. And that can be one of the responses is, well, over here, it's a whole different story. So, this doesn't almost apply to me, or I got to just lower what's possible. So we don't want that. So certainly where you are and the location, the timing of the year, a number of things are going to impact the quality or the amount of that light that you're receiving. So one kind of rule of thumb is that we're looking to have as much bright light exposure in the first half of our day. So if you have any control over the creation and lineup of your day and the light exposure, what you really want to anchor that in is the first half of the day. And ideally within the first 30 minutes or so, but certainly within the first couple hours. And we're looking to have a significant chunk of time, ideally. So anywhere from 20 minutes to, I have some clients that will really aim to get around an hour each morning. Now, I know that that's not always kind of doable for a lot of people, or at least if you're starting out from a tiny habit perspective, beginning even with a few minutes, but you're aiming to have that right in your eye, hit your eyes. And the reason for that being that it's directly connected to our suprachiasmatic nucleus, as I know you guys have done some work on, which is fantastic. And so that's going to reset our master clock each day. There is an averaging out element. So if one day it's really busy and you're only able to get a few minutes, as long as you're able to largely keep this a regular part of your kind of routine, then the body can often kind of adjust, but there is a difference in the amount that as long as you're able to lean into this routinely. So anchoring that in on the first half of the day. If it's a cloudy, overcast day, then some people say we'll skip it, which actually it's the opposite is what we're going for. You want to extend the amount of time that you're outside when it is that overcast day. So then that actually behooves us to even in those northern latitude locations, that we're aiming to get ourselves a significant chunk out of that time that we're spending outside. This also applies in the winter. So, you can be more extreme. Like one of the reasons, one of the ways that we select where we're living. So we've been traveling now before the pandemic, around 3 years, and we would aim to pick places that you get a lot of bright light exposure. Certainly Vegas is one of those at this point.
That's why I came here.
Yeah, exactly. So, some people throw out the 37th parallel and, aiming to be below that when possible. Now, I know that that's not always practical. I was born in Maine, lived in New York for a bunch of years. So there's times when we can't necessarily do that. So, that's when there are different conversations. Some people can lean into faux light, which is a tricky conversation. Things like Spurdy are light boxes that then you can produce your own vitamin D from. And so, even some people have that covered under doctor's prescriptions. And so there's, different things that you can lean into with that. But we want that amplitude to be really high. You can also use lux meters on your phone to kind of measure the lux that's in the environment versus inside. And then do remember, because so many people will glaze over this conversation. They say, well, it's fine. I'm by a window. There's a light. It's okay. But then
not
just
the
remember,
same.
right. But then remembering Dr. Jamie Zeitzer, he's done a number of studies around circadian rhythm effects for a number of years from the lighting perspective. And puts it anywhere from 50 to 100 times longer to adjust and reset that master clock each day when getting that light behind a window. So it and it's not as if it's it's not like a mathematical equation when, okay, we'll just spend, 50 to 100 times longer in front of the window. It doesn't really work like that. So, so instead we're aiming to get ourselves outside without those sunglasses on the first half of the day. Now, if you're in, Broadway and then you're coming out in the afternoons, that's often kind of referred to as the circadian dead zone, where there's a importance of getting outside, and for a number of health reasons, excitatory, kind of the dopamine hit from the sun, the activation, as far as just being more alert. Vitamin D possibilities, all of these really positive things. But from a circadian perspective, there's we're speaking generalities, because of course, if your afternoon is someone else's morning, but if for the average person's afternoon, then that falls into that kind of circadian dead zone, because it's more about the poles. So you want to be connected to that first half, and then we're looking to have a significant drop post sunset. And so using sunset as a way to kind of trigger that, now we're kind of downshifting and then going into that evening and then setting up your environment accordingly. NASA's done a number of really interesting studies on this, and how they kind of coin it is static lighting versus dynamic lighting. So static lighting would be having that, same type of lighting throughout the entire course of your day. Again, using myself as example, for so long, I would be waking up late. I would often wake up like, zombie, like one, like lights down. Maybe I have a headache, maybe I have whatever. I'm just like surviving. And then it's not till later on, after some coffee, after all the things, then I'm finally flipping on the lights, probably more into like the early evening, everything's upside down. And so that would be kind of this example of this misalignment of certainly these cues for my circadian rhythm. But what we want to have is in alignment with our rhythms, having dynamic lighting, because then we see a real measurable, very cool uptick in melatonin production. But then also just a shift in kind of our brain chemistry of then down regulating in the evenings in alignment with those kind of natural shifts.
Yeah.
Everything that Broadway is not. Cool.
Broadway. Yeah. It's just a tough one, just like the casinos. But I've heard some offices now are doing, I think maybe it is called dynamic lighting. Like in the morning, they're doing like full spectrum, high lux or whatever. And then throughout the day, they're dimming.
Yes.
So smart.
Absolutely. Yeah. Everything we're talking about, what's really cool too, is that what's likely is that more, sooner than later. One, we won't need to be thinking about this lighting element of things as much, at least from an internal perspective. Like hospitals are really beginning to advocate more and more for this, because then they see improved kind of healing time, release time for patients, and they've even seen that based on studies of are people getting access to just window rooms versus non-window rooms, and then how can they mimic that when they don't have access to windows? So really important conversation there. But then great. Also, so the second on the rung of most important for that circadian rhythm entrainment is temperature. So that will be most likely another area that will be automatized, so that then the temperature in your space, the ambient temperature, will uptick in the days to kind of better facilitate what our body temperature shifts are meant to be. If they're in alignment, is that there's that rise throughout the course of the day and then a dropping in the evening. And so then all of that just gets handled. So right now I can manually do that. When I wake up, I'm turning up the temperature in the space, and then in the evening, down ticking that until, getting as, I like to put it as cold as humanly possible, and with the cooler. And same. And just so, just getting that kind of shift can be really, really important. What's fascinating too is that there's a number of things that also impact that body temperature that I think many of us might not have been as connected to. I certainly wasn't. So some of those being like our meal timing, our meal type, our meal volume, our exercise timing, exercise type, thought timing, I think is a really fascinating one. I think I might have mentioned this, maybe Renee, maybe we spoke about this, but one thing that I've always thought was really fascinating is one piece of tech that was actually at CES just recently as well, but called the EBB, and not because anyone needs to get this piece of tech or anything, but the more just because of what it points to, and it's around cooling of the prefrontal cortex.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. So the concern that when we see people that kind of are in that category of chronic insomniacs, that they are dealing with kind of a heating up of their brain matter in their prefrontal cortex consistently, and then it's kind of that counter cue to the body. So it's, if that is happening versus when we're trying to cultivate a down shift in our core body temperature, it's kind of mismatched signals. So this is a piece of tech that has some trials behind it, looking at the efficacy of just the cooling being providing a trigger for the body to say, oh, okay, it is time to sleep. It's time to relax, time to cool down.
So cool.
Yeah. So, and I'm not saying everyone needs to get like a cooling headband thing, but more
or mattress
just,
or there's so many,
right. Not necessarily that, but more just like the fascination that, oh my God, my thoughts can be, affecting my body temperature, and that can behoove us to then take reverence for thought timing. That's one of the things that we'll do with clients too, is just noticing, I have a number of clients that once we start pattern spotting, so that we'll have them do sleep bots, so daily check-ins around what's happening with their sleep. And then we often find reliable patterns that just kind of come out again and again. They, oh, I didn't even notice the fact that, I'm often speaking with my partner about the kids or the bills or the whatever before bed. And it can seem like sort of just this like benign, no problem thing. And yet it continues to show up again and again in sleep latency times and, kind of frequency of wake ups and a number of things. So that thought timing is another one. And then of course, other things that will affect body temperature, chronopharmacology. So looking at the timing of different drugs that we might be taking. And we kind of spoke to some of, the very popular ones, alcohol, THC, caffeine, some of those common. Then there's also supplements that some people might be taking that might be counter, effective as far as what their goals are with their sleep, or different drugs that they might be taking that might be affecting some of their sleep quality. And that's what I'll see a lot of too, people dealing with, they've now been on different, sleeping medications or uppers throughout the day, so if they're dealing with, Adderall or different things to have a particular effect throughout the day, and then the kind of the difficulty within the evening. So lots of management systems there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think the worst thing is when you had caffeine too late in the day and you're like, ah,
yes.
Why did I do that? And I will say one of my
erased.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I usually sleep at like 67 degrees. in my room, but I notice if I eat too late or have alcohol, any of those things, I have to bump it to 65 to get the same quality of sleep.
Yes,
Yeah.
The 2
absolutely.
degrees. So that's my hack. That's like not like a cooling mattress and the headband, like
Yes. No, I
yet,
love that.
but
And I
makes a
think that can
difference.
also, it's huge. Yeah. And just being able to, I think there's power in this education process. So exactly what you both are doing and, standing for is this conversation. The more we know, the, more we can take new action and informed action. And that's really our commitment with sleep as a skill, is this conversation that, because then there are going to be times when I'm sure, when we've engaged in different, having a drink, having a whatever. So then we want to, if we've already made that choice, then how can we mitigate some of the damage that might happen for the, the next day and the recovery process. And so having those things in our back pocket are huge. I literally was just speaking with a client, right before this conversation. And, for him, it's summer and lots of different options for socializing. And for him, just even these abilities to start moving back the time when he's socializing, making it earlier. Oh, so I said back. So making it earlier, to clarify. And so, moving that timing, and then also the amount of alcohol that he might be engaging. I'm just using him as an example. And yet for all of us that we can shift out, there's more and more conversations around replacements and swaps that we can lean into to still have an element of a state change, but without then sacrificing our sleep. So how can we kind of have it all, have balance? Is really what we're out to see. And then as we test, then it's that test, don't guess side of things too, and layering in these metrics so that we can understand what works for us.
Yeah, really using that skill. So another skill, what do you think about sleep chronotypes? Do you believe in
Yes.
that? And if so, I'm curious what you are.
Oh, really good question. So here's what, so the sleep chronotype topic is such a good one. And I think there is an importance for us in the 21st century and, right now, 2021 and beyond, to really consider how much entrainment has been going on just based on our lifestyle and based on kind of the things that we're choosing to partake in, and how much that can be playing a role in what we might think are kind of innate for us. So, for example, for so long, I was hard and fast that I am a night owl, not even just a night owl, extreme night owl, like, hardcore. And,
A 4-hour night owl.
Right. And it's like, I can stay up till whatever, till the sun rises and blah, blah, blah. And then would be super justified and have all kinds of a body of examples and evidence that then I do my best work in the night. I'm focused. I'm this, I'm that. And then I surrounded myself with other, often poker players, that were also in alignment. Yeah, me too. And that was sort of the environment. So from that place, the fact that, so how do we reconcile the fact that now, certainly myself and my fiance, now we often are rising with the sun, and there's this whole other world. So one, we can stand in the fact that because we know that our circadian rhythm can be entrained, that there is, it is malleable, and that there is a shifting nature. Of course, we know that there is a tendency for sure of different people to kind of gravitate towards particular ways of being, and that it's not static, and then it shifts, and it's very much dynamic and shifts throughout the course of our lives. And we see this kind of shifting for many people. And not only in the amount of sleep that's required, obviously needing more sleep as we're younger into teenage years. And then over time, kind of a downshifting of the amount, and then certainly later on in life, then often requiring less sleep or having more a kind of shifting of the sleep requirement, sleep need. So from that place, I think there's a really important element to how can we, from the circadian lens, shift some of our behaviors and see what the results are. So an example is, out of University of Colorado did a really interesting study of taking people that often were living more on that kind of night owl side of things, and very connected to screens and a lot of electronics, and there was a particular way that they were running their lives, and then they brought them camping for an extended period of time, and within a relatively short period of time, they start kind of shifting more in alignment and in alignment with that circadian rhythm side of things when the sun is rising and the sun is setting. And a really significant shift in the bedtime and wake time, and being able to kind of adopt to that seemingly pretty effortlessly, just based around the triggers or cues in their environment. So from that place, it does have us notice that there can be that ability to shift. So I think the more that we avoid locking ourselves into a type of label, and I also believe this is really important in psychology too, when a lot of people will say, well, I'm an extrovert and I'm an introvert, and yet there's so much that can keep us locked in, to then further support our ideology or our assessment of how life is. So I think there's a lot of empowerment to, one, re-explore, but two, there's certain things we can test for, and there's tendencies of different people. So that's, something you can't, refute per se, but I think there's absolutely an opportunity to shift, our ways of being based on, our goals and what we're out to achieve with our health.
That really reminds me of metabolic typing, this nutrition quiz that I use.
Yeah.
I find with a lot of people, sometimes we don't get really an accurate picture, because if your microbiome is, strengthened for sugar and carbs, you may think that you're more of a carbo type. But once you start to clean out your diet and just eat more real food, sometimes it's revealed that you are a mixed type, a protein type. So it's sort of like just finding your baseline, coming back to neutral, and then retesting. So yes. I think you were already going in this direction. I know I believe, and I have believed for a long time, that I'm a dolphin. And I catch myself sometimes being like, well, I'm a dolphin because I can't nap. And that's such a pet peeve of mine when people are like, I can't do something, but I said it, I can't nap. And
I'm a light sleeper.
And like that programming is so strong for me. So how would someone like a dolphin who is maybe like an insomniac, or a wolf who likes to stay up late, how do you even begin to come back to a baseline where you could start to explore other options?
Yeah, such a good question. And believe me, oh my goodness, when I was struggling with my sleep, I'm a dolphin through and through, and there's no hope for me. I'm always going to be one part of the brain asleep, one part of the brain awake.
Yep, look at me, it is. There's my eye.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. And then just really this opportunity to see shift, and we'll see people make some of these shifts naturally. If people listening might have seen, oh, well, I was a particular way and then I had kids, or I was a particular way and then I got this other job, and then blah, blah. And so all these things show us how much we can shift things based on, external structures or goal points that we now have for ourselves. So one, I think there's another framework that can be important in any conversation to improve our sleep. One of the frameworks that we create out of Sleep as a Skill is called the sleep tripod. So it's looking at having workability between your psychology, physiology, and environment. And then from that place, then getting clear on what are some of those things that might be impeding some of our goals with our sleep. So one, if in the psychology side of things, if there's something acute that's happened, there's been a death in the family, there's been, you lost your job, divorce, different large things, often we will see more difficulty with sleep. And then also very commonly seeing kind of chronic stressors that are in the space, and then difficulty for us to be able to kind of calm our nervous system accordingly, be able to relax enough to get some of those naps throughout the course of the day or what have you. So, really seeing that can be so common for so many of us. That was when I couldn't sleep. Oh my goodness, there was no chance of getting a nap, so wired but tired. So I really, really hear that. And from that same place, then looking at our physiology, and I know both of you are so knowledgeable in this area too, of the testing side of things, of understanding, well, okay, if we've got, thyroid issues, if we have deficiencies, mega deficiencies in certain areas, magnesium, issues with iron, B vitamins, all these other things, then obviously sleep is going to have some problems in alignment with that. And so then in addition to looking at that area, then we're also looking at environments. So we have our clients send over pictures and often video of their space. And so looking at what it looks like before they go to bed, and then also their bedroom environment and shifting that. So, getting really workability with all of these things, because then once we ensure that we're having a kind of stimulus control conversation at the appropriate times as much as possible without being like dogmatic or neurotic. So a fine line. But ensuring that we have that workability, then we can start to see, okay, well, even with all of these variables accounted for, then we're still having a particular type of tendency. Then we look deeper. But often what we do is first we do 90-day kind of packages for people with their sleep. And often the first bunch of weeks are just getting to neutral and just kind of having, eliminating some of those counter cues. And then once we get that kind of out of the way, then we can start to see what else might be at play for them and some natural tendencies or deeply ingrained issues going on, so that we can get more clear on how to make a lasting difference.
Cool. That's amazing. Amazing. Okay, Mollie, we have so many more questions for you, but one that I'm dying to ask, because this is not a selfish, like personal question, but I'm sure people listening are wondering this. Can we talk about sleep aids and what that's actually doing to our sleep quality and our heart rate variability? Because I hear this all the time. Oh, I take whatever and I'm knocked out for the night. But what's really happening?
Are you talking about meds or supplements or all of that?
Like meds.
Yes, the meds.
Even like Tylenol PM or Ambien. I'm trying to think of the ones that like I hear people using a lot, but
yeah, absolutely. So,
not just like CBD and magnesium. I'm not talking about those. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Really good question too, because also, for anyone listening, I think there can be a lot of shame too for people if they've been, that was certainly where I was at with my sleep when I was, that at a loss that, okay, I'm going to take this thing that oh my God, I never thought I would taking, but here I am taking it. And so one, even if anyone's listening and either is taking any of these or know someone that is, it can just be a really layered topic. So, and when we're like, what are we talking about? Usually it's two different groups. Often the benzodiazepine group for kind of aiming to calm some of these stressors and anxiety for people before sleep to get that sleep. And then the other group, hypnotics, within the Ambien group, Lunesta, those sort of things. So both of those, while kind of functioning a bit differently, they're kind of sisters to a certain extent in some of the effects that we see for sleep. And the concerns are that one, impacting our ability to get and maintain certainly deep sleep in particular with some of these, and which can be so challenging because then our ability to really properly recover throughout the evening, a mega reason for the process of sleep, is really impacted. And there's also concerns then correlating. I'm sure, a lot of us have seen some of the making the rounds more recently around correlations between sleep deprivation and dementia from a large scale study that was just released. But even before that, then there's conversations around correlations between sleep deprivation and neurological and neurodegenerative issues like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and dementia. So when we are impeding that ability to get into that deep sleep consistently, there's some very, very real concerns that can come about. And also just the overall ineffectiveness over the long term for so many of these drugs. So many people, and I was one of them, was like terrified of now not having them because I'm not going to sleep. I'm not going to sleep. And yet at the same time, started on average, the total, the augmenting of that that total sleep is often very, very low. Different studies point to different things, but 15, 30 minutes of a difference is kind of what we're boiling it down to. But unfortunately, the type of that sleep that we're getting is pretty concerning because it's a more sedated type of sleep. So what I see on my side, because every client that I'm working with is wearing a sleep tracker. And so I'll see shifts in respiratory rate when I can often tell when they've taken some of these medications, when they haven't. And of course, I think it goes without saying, everything we're talking about, this is not advice, medical advice, and you want to always consult with your doctor. And this is, a layered conversation. And there's very measurable results that we'll often see. Often see changes in heart rate. Often see their heart rate being higher. I'll see their HRV often decently lower on the nights that they have taken these. I'll see, I mentioned the respiratory rate one, sometimes some of the shifts in body temperature as well, and then blood oxygen shifts too. So it's something that's just like one area of the piece of the concerns that come about from these. And then there's a psychological concern too, because now we're reliant upon something external, and it doesn't just apply to the people that are taking prescription. It can be some of us that, well, I have to have this perfect stack of, oh my God, 12 different supplements and this, that, and the other. And it's not to say there's not
my sleep cabinet.
right, exactly. It's not to say that there can't be some value and what have you, but there's also kind of from that ability, that self-efficacy of, the sense that without these things, then I can't sleep. There's some concern there. One of the things that we often point to that we're aiming to create is a life of kind of the desert island effect or approach, so that you can be dropped on a desert island and still know yourself to get great sleep, kind of night after night with, nothing but the clothes on your back. And this came from, part of the goal was actually, this was, a real sense of urgency for me, because I had a fear that I wasn't going to be able to do all of this, travel that in my brain was so important to me, and creating a life that I wanted to, was inspiring. And there was a sense that I can't do these things because then I'll have to be bringing all these, things that I'm relying on. There's certain countries that you can't even go into when you have all these different drugs, there's legal issues. And then also just, if something happens, I lose the luggage, whatever. And just with this such shaky relationship to my strength and confidence around my ability to get great sleep, then throw you into, jet lag, different Airbnbs, like good luck. Really being able to, right?
So many factors.
Oh, so many factors. Absolutely.
So I have a personal experience and question, which is going to lead me into my final question. I'm laughing. I was like pulling out my phone as you were talking to look at my sleep data from when I had COVID symptoms. I had the best sleep scores of all time in that month. Like when I look back, it was like crown. I did take some Tylenol PM during that time because I was like, I never take this stuff, but right now my recovery is so important. I don't want anything to stop me from sleeping. Slept amazing. And it actually changed my baseline. So since April, my sleep scores have been terrible because everything's compared to that month where it appeared to be incredible.
Yes.
Is that the tech or is there something else I'm missing?
So really good point. So one, that's why there can be some concerns about different sleep trackers, or one of the reasons. So one is that they're often going to reward you for higher amounts of total sleep. So there is that. So just even kind of looking out for, because sometimes I'll have different clients that are on layers of different prescriptions, and they will be getting crowns all over the place. And yet the quality of that sleep we know is in question. And then when we look at some of these kind of readiness indicators, some of the things that we discussed there with HRV, heart rate, other things. So one, it's being able to know kind of what to look for, because unfortunately these trackers are not infallible. There's still concerns with some of them, or with the consumer grade right now, there's a lot of issues. So for one thing that I often tell people is to, for any hand and wrist-based trackers, to really largely not take too much stock into the sleep stage classifications, because often those are gonna, many of the studies have it kind of a coin toss of their abilities to spot these different stagings as compared to a polysonogram. So, and a lot of people get really, really stressed out about some of these numbers.
Yeah, like REM sleep. I see people having attacks about it. It's like, well, that's
Yeah.
probably not even right.
You'd be
Yes,
dead. You'd be
right.
dead if you weren't getting it. Yeah.
And then, then they go, their heads explode because then you start having all these different trackers. And then on the other tracker, it says, oh my God, I'm getting so much REM. The other tracker says, I know. And then the deep sleep. And so unfortunately, we're not quite there yet with those. There's some promising developments with the head-based trackers, although I haven't still seem to have struggles with a number of people for the usability on the head-based ones. Just, they're just not as usable. There's a lot of falling off. There's a lot of incomplete data, that sort of thing. But I do think we're on the verge of some improvements there. Also, what you're speaking to too, some people notice differences with the histamine element of things. So when they're taking over the counter, supplements for sleep aids, and then there's that antihistamine effect, kind of like Benadryl and different things that we might be taking, depending on the person, there can be shifts in some of the sleep readouts that we'll see. So definitely continuing to test on that. But then there are some concerns around what does the quality of that sleep look like over the long term. And that one definitely still needs some more studies to be pulled on that. So some people will look at things like the reliance on say like Tylenol, Advil, and then also the PM quality of it. So that antihistamine effect, and how some people will see exactly what you saw too, that improvement. I had something similar like that too. And there were certain improvements in some stats and then certain odd things happening with other stats. So we do need more studies, unfortunately, on that one. But overall, there's a look at some of these, the reliance on those over the long term and shifting some of the quality of the sleep staging, which unfortunately, as we just spoke to, we can't really be confidently measuring with some of our consumer trackers. But when looked at on polysonograms, seeming to point to more challenging readouts of maintaining proper sleep architecture when we're leaning into some of those over-the-counters consistently.
Yeah. Helpful.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to have you back on to do like an entire tech gadget episode because you know so much about that.
Yeah. I'm panicked because we're running out of time. I'm like, don't go.
I know. And I know you have to run. If we can ask one final question, one piece of advice you can give to our audience that they can start doing today.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Well, I think a two-prong approach. So one, just standing in this context that, sleep really is a skill. And so from that place, there's no shame in the game. There's no certain programming or certain way that you are that's just sort of, you're screwed, you're this, it doesn't have to look like that. There's like any great skill. You can start fresh, start at 101 and then see what's possible. So from that place of kind of childlike curiosity, then starting to take on an experimenter's lens of, and both of you are such fantastic proponents of this and really creating a forum for people to learn and to experiment to see what works for them. So with that experimenter's lens, then absolutely tracking in some way, shape, or form. If you're already tracking, then starting to really play with how we can layer in some of these circadian lens. So we have people really sit with just basically a spreadsheet of their day and creating their ideal day through this lens of circadian rhythm entrainment. So what would that look like for you? What could you really commit to 7 days a week and make it livable and workable within your lifestyle, within your preferences? What would really inspire you? And then really, if our days are our life, then what could that look like? Really to have a life that you wake up excited to start in on whatever it is, your morning routine with, I just spoke with another client who was like, yeah, I'm going to move my Peloton outside to get my morning sun and listen to podcasts. And like for him, it was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So whatever whatever it could be for you, and it might
make it work for you.
Make it work for you and be able to be excited about this, be able to then see that real kind of cause and effect. And then our ultimate goal is that you don't have to think about all of this so much. So you're not having to, I need to get the perfect meditation thing like at night because my brain's still going because I've, haven't really been in the conversation of all these things I could do starting when I first wake up that will really help support me so that this is all kind of handled. So leaning into this and then testing and experimenting and course correcting, because, often people then will get all inspired and they'll say, yeah, I'm going to get up with the sun and it's going to be amazing and blah, blah, blah. And then 2 days go by and then the whole thing's gone out the window.
Yeah.
So, not getting discouraged, but then kind of, adjusting and then also allowing for the body to adjust just like any other time when you're traveling internationally or whatever, and you jet lag, you give yourself the grace to adjust. And that's the same thing we're looking to do here. And then of course, I know you guys speak to this a lot, but just making the most important push for that morning sunlight, that anchoring system. So if you do nothing else or get nothing else out of anything I've said today, hopefully it's that anchoring of the first half of the day and, the outside nature that can bring about to just really be a part of something that you look forward to, hopefully. And that there's a real kind of cause and effect with that timing. And then when you're going to get tired later on. And it's a strategy too for shift workers. You can, if you want to get, tired later, or poker players or whoever you're talking about, there's a real strategy because then you can actually, delay the timing of that first shot of light because there is such a clear impact of the timing of this. And then when you're going to get tired later on in the evening. So hopefully that's all clear and can feel like a bit of a kind of, superpower when we start leaning into it.
Amazing. Love it. You were just filled with advice.
You're a sleep connoisseur. I love it. Thank you. This is so wonderful. Where can our audience find you?
Awesome. Yes. Well, and thank you guys so much because I feel like what you're standing for is just really, really inspiring. I know making such a difference. So I'm excited to be a part of this conversation.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And then as far as places to go, Sleep is a Skill really acts as sort of a bucket of all the things. So if you go to sleepisaskill.com, we have a sleep assessment on there that will, really quickly send you back an email that will have kind of tailored responses based on what you're dealing with your sleep. Also signs you up for a weekly newsletter where we aim for that to be really, kind of value packed is our goal around all kinds of different things that you can do to make a difference with your sleep, different studies coming out, news, different topics there.
Molly knows it's my favorite newsletter.
So when Renee says that
every Monday,
Renee makes my week when she throws that out, it just makes me so happy.
It's a great newsletter. Seriously.
I have so much fun with it. And I also really encourage people to respond with any call outs, or if they like a certain thing, yay. If they don't like a certain thing, let us know too, because we really want to keep evolving this, improving it. So, no matter where you're at in your sleep, our goal is that you can, up level this. And so that will also include our weekly podcast. So you can, if you want to go in deeper on that. And if you're really struggling or, just are curious to up level, then we do have 90-day packages, one-on-ones, and also cohorts. We also have some exciting stuff coming with some partnerships with some hotels to start seeing like some, kind of sleep offerings a bit more and more while you're traveling. So, really excited to further, bring more and more of us into this conversation, because again, if I didn't have the experience I had, I'm sure, knowing me, I would still be doing all those things, without question, probably. And it really, really transformed my life. And I'm just, super passionate to help support others to shift their relationship to their sleep as well.
Great.
Amazing.
All right. And so we'll link to all that in the show notes, and we'll share all your social media. I know you're very active all over the place, so we'll share all of those as well. Yeah, you do a great job. Oh, thank you so much, Molly. This was so much fun, and can't wait to hang out in person next week.
Yes.
We're going to get amazing sleep.
Yes, we are.
We're going to need to biohack our Airbnb.
I know.
I love
We'll
it.
have to talk about some strategies there. Okay.
I'm going to bring the stickers and my night light.
Yes.
We'll make a list and we'll kind of.
Yes.
I love it. Oh my
Great.
goodness. We might have to do some kind of a content creation right on site with all this. We're going to have some good stuff.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. Ding, ding, ding.
Awesome.
We'll do
Ding,
it.
ding, ding.
Well, thank you so
All
much
right.
for joining us today. This is such a pleasure. And thank you for everyone for tuning in.
Oh, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you to everyone. Wow, can't speak.
Yes. Thanks all.
Bye. Thank you, editors.
Exactly.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Nailed it.
Nailed it.